Hey everyone! So today we've got a really cool story for you. It's all about how a team of students took a simple hackathon project and spun it into a real-deal business that's tackling the renewable energy industry. It's a pretty amazing journey. So how does that happen? How do you go from a weekend project to a legitimate company? Is it just a flash of genius or maybe a lucky break? Well, in this story, it was all about smart thinking, doing the research, and making one absolutely crucial pivot. Let's get into it. This whole thing didn't start in some fancy boardroom. Nope, it started with a competition. The team had one single goal in mind: win. So they did their homework, right? They looked at who won in previous years and noticed something really important. The judges weren't just wowed by cool tech demos, they were looking for actual business solutions to real-world problems.
Okay, so after tossing around a few ideas that were maybe a little too complicated, they landed on their first solid concept, a project they decided to call FAIRDAR.
And talk about ambitious? Their goal was to help manage the entire renewable energy grid for Morocco. The plan was to build a special piece of hardware, a custom device you'd install at power plants to track and prove how much green energy was being generated. It sounds like a solid plan, at least on paper. And here is where they hit a massive wall. See, anyone who's ever tried to build custom hardware will tell you it can be a total nightmare. It's slow, it costs a fortune to design and manufacture. This wasn't just some small hiccup. This was the kind of problem that could kill the entire project before it even got started. So, realizing their first idea was basically a dead end, they did what every great startup needs to know how to do. They pivoted. They didn't give up on the goal, not at all. They just threw out the method and went right back to the drawing board to find a much smarter way to get it done. And you can really see the difference side by side here. On the one hand, you have FAIRDAR, clunky, expensive custom hardware. And then you have the new idea, a sleek, software-only solution. Instead of trying to build and install brand new devices, their new approach was genius. It just connects to the industrial systems that these power plants already have. That made it cheaper, faster, and way more scalable, using AI to make it all smarter. This wasn't just a minor adjustment, This was a complete transformation of the entire business model. And with a new, more powerful idea, they needed a new name to match that potential. And so, VerifiedCC was born. So, what is VerifiedCC all about? What's the problem this new software-first company decided to tackle? Well, it all boils down to one huge fundamental issue in the renewable energy world: trust. Think about it from the perspective of a solar or wind farm. They have two massive headaches. First, just proving that their energy is actually green so they can get valuable carbon credits. That's a super slow, really expensive process. And second, they're constantly in disputes with the national power grid about how much energy they've actually produced, which of course affects how much they get paid. And this is where the solution from VerifiedC is just so elegant. They call it trust as a service. What does that mean? It means they're not just selling a piece of software, they are selling certainty. They provide a single, undeniable source of truth that both the green energy producer and the power company can look at and trust completely. So how does it actually work? Well, it's a pretty simple three-step process. First, the software just plugs into the systems the power plant is already using. Then, it takes the energy production data and records it forever on the Hedera network, which is basically an unchangeable digital ledger. And that creates data that is, and this is the key, born audited. It's trustworthy from the very second it's created. No more arguments, no more costly audits, problem solved. But look, a great idea is only half the story, right? To be a real company, you need a plan for growth. And VerifiedCC came up with a really clear, really mature plan for how they were going to go from a single service to a full-blown platform. Their plan rolls out in three totally logical phases. Phase 1, they launch that core auditing service we just talked about. Solve the immediate problem, get customers in the door. Then, in Phase 2, they're going to add an automated agent that takes that verified data and sells the carbon credits for their customers. That's a whole new revenue stream. And finally, Phase 3 is all about listening to those first customers and building out the platform based on what they actually need. See, this isn't just a wish list, it's a real roadmap. It shows that they really understand their market. You start with one laser-focused solution, you solve a real pain point, and then you scale up from there into something much bigger. That is how you turn a project into a company that lasts. And that right there, that quote, brings us full circle, right back to the very beginning. Remember that lesson they learned from studying the past hackathon winners? Well, their entire journey, from ditching the hardware to creating that three-phase growth plan, proves they didn't just hear that advice. They built their entire company around it.
And that kind of leaves us with one final big question to think about. This whole idea of trust as a service is a game changer for renewable energy. But where else could we use it? I mean, think about supply chains, right? Knowing exactly where your food came from. Or what about academic records or even voting? Where else could a single, unchangeable source of truth completely change everything? It's pretty interesting to think about.